In our previous tutorial, we talked about JavaScript prototypes. Now we said a prototype is a built-in uh, property of JavaScript objects that serves as a template for inheritance. And then this uh, built-in property allows objects to share property and method. We demonstrate some of the key concepts in JavaScript prototypes. And prominent among them is this concept known as prototype chain, or if you like, it's a prototype tree where you have all kinds of prototypes and then everything links together till we get to the roots of that tree where we have our source prototype known as object.prototype. So in this tutorial, we're going to take our exploration of JavaScript objects a step further. And if you're wondering, this is object-oriented programming in JavaScript. Uh, as some of you might be familiar with, object-oriented programming is a programming concept that uses object as its central principle. So the idea is to break code into smaller pieces so that each piece uh, manage its own internal states, and then some of these states are reviewed to other aspects of our program through what is known as encapsulation. So what is reviewed is what is known by the other program, if that makes sense. So in this tutorial, we're going to be talking about classes. And like we said in the previous tutorial, we said under the hood, ES6 classes are still implementing prototype. Only that classes offer us cleaner syntax to work with JavaScript objects. And for those of you who are coming from classical programming language, I believe you're going to be familiar, or you might be familiar with these concepts of JavaScript classes. So we have some kind of a diagram in our browser, class declarations, uh, what is the instances, and all that. All of this we're going to be getting into uh, much later in our program. So let's get into Visual Studio Code and let's play with some program to demonstrate these concepts that we have here. So here in our Visual Studio Code, if you go to script.js, see we have our previous program that we were working with to demonstrate JavaScript prototypes. So we're going to try to re-implement this using classes. So I'm going to get rid of this, and then we're going to re-implement what we're doing here using classes. And then if time permits, maybe we talked about private property and mixins. Okay, so let's do class person, starting with the capital letter. So we start with the class keyword, and then the name of the class, and then the convention is the first letter is uppercase. Okay, so we define a constructor here, and then it takes a parameter. Then we can say this name is equals to name, like that. So our constructor is the function that fires when we instantiate this class. So when we create a new object. So you can think of classes or a class as the blueprint for an object. Okay, so we can define a method, say hello, our method say hello if you remember. And then inside here we can say return. We can use template string here. Hello everyone. Hello everyone. My name is this the name. So this refers to our objects. So we can create a static property here. So we say static, and then say species, and then we say human. So a static property is a property that we can access directly on our class. So this property with a static keyword, it belongs to this class, such that we don't have to instantiate our class. We don't have to create an object or a new instance of a class before we can access this. So we can access this directly on this class because it belongs to this class directly. So let's create another method. Let's call this greet, and then we can do return this say hello, like that. So method greet is returning this method. So its function, we're calling a method in the context of our class, because this is a property of this class and it has a value of function. So we're going to call it on this object on our class when we create a new object, that is a new instance of this class. So when we bind a function to an object through the dot notation, we call that function a method. So it's a method in that context. So that's the first class. We can create another class. So a class developer, then extends. I don't know how much longer that word developer is going to apply to programmers with the increasing proliferation of AI, but we'll see. So we have constructor, and then here we have name, language, like that, and then we have super name. So this super is giving reference to this class. So this class person is a super class of class developer. So super is referencing this class person. So this name is the name in our person constructor. So super essentially is calling this constructor here. Remember, in our previous execution, when we use constructor functions, we're calling the constructor person explicitly here using the call method, and then we're binding these to that constructor. So here we're using super. This is the syntax peculiar to JavaScript class. So person becomes a superclass of class developer. So let's move on. Then we can do this dot language is equals to language. Okay, so this is accurate language, like that. And then outside of this constructor, we can create a method, say code, for instance. And then what do we want to do? Then we can do return, hey guys, I code this dot language, like that. Okay, so now we have two classes. And then we can create So we have two classes. The first class is class person. It has this constructor, this method. It has a static property and then another method here that is returning this method. Okay. And then we have another class that extends this class. So because this class extends person, class person, whatever method or property person has, we can access it on this class because this class is extending this class. So this class has become a superclass of this class. So let's create an instance of a class. So we can do const dev, then we do new. This is how we create a new instance of a class. So we do developer like that. Now in our developer constructor, we're expecting two inputs. So we can pass the value of our inputs here. The first one, say hola. Then we can do JavaScript like that. So we can now use this object to access any property or method on our class, on our classes. So then we can do console.log dev dot say hello. So if we do say hello, let's see what we get. Remember what we're returning in say hello. Say hello says return hello everyone. My name is this.name. So we have to specify what name is. So I've passed the value of name here, Ola. So this should give us hello everyone. My name is Ola. If this works. So let's go to our browser and let's see. So I'm going to open console. Okay, let me refresh. Then we get something from our previous. Okay, so it says, hello everyone, my name is Ola. Okay, so that works. We can do more. Remember, we said static is a property of this class. We don't have to create an instance of this to access this. So let's see if I do console.log person dot species. Let's see what that gives us. Remember we said species to human. So we get human. So we still have access to this person property here. We can do whatever we like here. We can even create an instance of this class if we don't want to use the instance we created with developer to access the methods and properties we have here. Now let's try to use this grid on our developer objects and let's see whether that gives us an output. So we say console.log dev dot greet. Say greet. It's a function. So remember, greet is returning say hello. So I'm going to just comment this out and let's see what we get. Sure enough, we got hello everyone. My name is Ola. Good. So that is working. Let's call this code as well. So we cannot use person to access code, but we can use our dev object to access code here. So this is what I'm saying. But does it work? No, it doesn't. So I'm going to do console.log dev.code like that. And if this works, it should say, hey guys, I code JavaScript. So it works. So it's, hey guys, I code JavaScript. Okay. So I believe you can agree with me that this syntax, it's a lot cleaner compared to the meta programming we were doing in the previous tutorial, where we were using constructor functions to construct our object using the traditional prototype. Okay, now let's implement uh, two concepts: private members and mixins. So I'm going to take it one after the other. I'm going to start with private members. So we can create private property. Remember, we're talking about encapsulation. So we break code into several pieces. Each piece manages its own internet state. And then what is reviewed is what other pieces have access to. That's encapsulation. So we can create some kind of private properties or maybe even private methods inside our class. And then that property will be private to that class. So let's demonstrate with some examples. So I'm going to get rid of this, and then we're going to implement private property. Now say we have class bank account like that. Okay. Now we have, this is how we create a private property. Hash balance 0. Now before now, when we create private property in JavaScript, we use underscore. So the idea is that the property is private to that scope where it is defined. Outside of that environment, we cannot access it. But when we used to use underscore prior to this time, the underscore didn't necessarily guarantee that such property is going to be private to the scope it's defined. So it kind of leaked outside of that scope. So the new approach is to use hash to create private property in our class. Okay, so having done that, we can do constructor. Okay, and then here, let's set default property initial 0 like that, and then we can do this dot hash balance equals to initial like that. Okay, so initially we're going to set the value of our balance to this initial value 0. Okay, so let's create a method. Let's do deposit, and then here we can do, okay, let me pass amount here, amount, and then here we can do serve a condition if amount is greater than 0, or what do we do? Then we can do this, and do this dot balance is equals to amount. So this is a additional assignment operator. So essentially this is saying is the balance equals to balance plus amount. So we're incrementing amount by our balance here. So this method checks whether amount is greater than 0. If it's greater than 0, then we can increment our balance. And remember, our balance is private to this class. Outside of this class, we cannot access it like that. Okay, so we can create another method called that withdraw. And then we can pass amount here. Okay, so what do we want to do? We can do if amount is greater than 0 and amount is less than or equals to this dot balance. What do we do? Then we can do this, the balance is okay. So we decrement this amount like that. So obviously when we're withdrawing, the money in our balance is reducing. So say if amount is greater than 0 and amount is less than or equals to the balance that we have prior to this time, then we can decrement our balance by our amounts. Okay. So if this is the case, we have to do something. So we return true. Okay. So return true. Otherwise we say return false. I'm being lazy here. This should have been another code block, but it's okay. You get the idea. So this is for withdraw. Let's do for our balance now. A method for a balance. Okay. So what if we implement a get method? A get method is a method that we can call like a property, not like a method. We can call it like a property. So a getter method. That's what I meant to say. So a getter method, we can call it on our object, much like we bind property, not like we bind, much like we bind property. So the way we create a getter is to use this keyword get, and then we do balance. So here we can say return this dot our balance. So this getter return balance. So this getter method is what we're going to use to access the value of a private property outside of this class. So what about a private method? So if you wish to create a private method, we also use hash before the method name. So we can do hash log transaction, for instance. Transaction. Okay. Log transaction. And then here, okay, let's pass two parameters, type, then amount, like that. And then here we can do console.log. Let's have template string, type. Okay. Let's do something like this. Let's have an array, then you have type, and then outside of here we can do amount. So this is the type and amount that is private method is expecting. So here we can do this is new balance, and then here we can do this dot balance, like that. So what are we doing here? Inside our log transaction, we are trying to log the balance we have in our account. So this log transaction is saying, okay, type amount. So it's expecting some kind of type information. We don't have it here yet, but we're going to create it inside our class. So this log transaction method is private to this class. Outside of this class, even when we create an instance of our class, we cannot access it. So which means we're going to call this method inside our class. So which means we have to create another method. So that we call We're going to call that transfer. So here we have transfer to an account, and then we have amount, like that. So what do we want to do there? We can do if this dot withdraw amount. So that withdraw method, call it on this amount inputs. Then we can say to account dot deposit, and then we pass amounts inside like this. So then we can do this dot log transaction, and then here we can do the type is transfer out, and then the second argument, which is amount, like that. Okay, so we have to set the value of our amount later on when we call this transfer method. And then we can also do to account dot log. So to account is an object because we are binding methods and property to it now. So this is log transaction. This is the log to account dot log transaction. Okay, so it's we have this what is it called? I can't remember this dot. What's the name called again? Optional null or what? So here we have transfer. Nope. Transfer in. That's the type, and then obviously we have to pass amount like that. So I'm going to run through this transfer method because it looks like there is a bit going on here. So this transfer method is expecting two parameters to account amounts. Now here we have a condition. Say if this withdraw, that is if this does withdraw. Now what is withdraw doing? Withdraw is a method. Say and withdraw, it takes amount, and then this is returning true if this condition is true. If amount is greater than 0 and amount is less than or equals to our balance, so we decrement our balance and then return true. So here it's saying if that is the case, then bind deposit to account. I don't think we have deposit anywhere here. Okay, we have deposit. So deposit is a method. So this deposit is what it's doing is expecting amount and say if amount is greater than 0, then increment our balance. So now here we're saying to account the deposit amount. So whatever is happening in that deposit, it's being binded to our to account object. So which means this parameter is an object. Now we now do this.log transaction, which is here. So this is just printing our balance, our new balance. So saying the type is transfer out, and then this is the amount that is left in our account. So we also have to account dot transaction. What is it called? I forgot, but this is just optional null if I'm not mistaken. Like this may or may not be applicable to our to account objects. That's the raw interpretation of what is going on here. So of course, in order to make use of our class, we have to create an instance of our class. So we can do const account, then we have new bank account, like that. So inside our constructor, we're expecting some kind of so initial is 0, so we might result not to use that initial that default parameter. So say we set initial to 100 or 1000 here. So then we can do account the deposit. So let's say 500. Now what is deposit doing? Let's go back to deposit. Deposit says if amount is greater than 0, increment our balance by the amount. So now, and so this dot okay. So if that is the case, let me just do, so account the deposit 500, then okay, so this cannot account the deposit 500. Are we going to get anything? Because I'm not logging anything to the console. Let me see what we get here. Nothing. So let me console.log account the deposit 500, console.log account the deposit 500, like that. So what do we get here? We get undefined. Why are we getting undefined? If we go to our deposit is saying if amount is greater than 0, then this dot balance, okay, we increase by, obviously it's undefined because well, balance is private to what we have here. So it's why we're getting undefined. So our balance is private to our class. So we really can't access its value outside of this class. So then what if we try to access our balance with our getter method? What is our getter method? This. Now remember, even though we are passing a private property here, because this is a getter method, we should be able to return what is here. Unlike when we just have a deposit method here, it's not a getter method. So it's why we're getting undefined, because well, it's implementing its internal functionality with this private property balance. So we have no access to what is being implemented by this private property outside of this class. So that's why we got undefined here. So let's use our getter method. For our getter method, we call it on the object, much like we call property. So we can do console.log account.balance. Balance. So let's see what we get. Now we get 1,500. The balance that we couldn't get here when we deposited 500. Remember, initially we had 1,000. And then when we did account the deposit 500, we didn't get 1,005. We got undefined here. We got undefined. And the reason we got undefined is because this deposit, the 500 being added to 1,000, is being handled inside this deposit method using our private property balance. So since we have no access to our private property balance outside of this class, we return undefined. Now when we go to our balance, here balance has been incremented by our amount, which was 500 that we set outside of this class. Remember, so initially we had balance was set to our initial value here. So inside this constructor, we have what is it called? We have a default property 0, but then when we instantiate our class, we set that initial value to 1000, so that here, when we do deposits, balance becomes 1000, that initial, plus amount 500 that we set it. But because balance is private and it's inside our generic method, we couldn't access it outside of a class. But when we use getter method, so actually getter method is used to access private properties anyway. So we can use this getter method to access our private property. So here, when we call balance, see, the way we call balance is different from the way we call our generic property or method. So here, we call balance. See, we didn't call it like as though it's a method. We call it as though it's a property. So when we did this, we're able to access the value of our private. What did I do? Okay, sorry. It's 1000 actually, because I've commented out console. I've commented out account.deposit, which had 500 deposit. So if I save this, then we should get 1500 back, like that. Okay. So I don't want to do it too long on this. There is another pattern known as mixing. And what mixing does is to simulate multiple inheritance. So in JavaScript, we are only allowed a single inheritance. So JavaScript classes support single inheritance. So we use the extends keyword, which extends one parent or one superclass. So when we do mixins, what mixins does is it lets us compose behavior from multiple sources. So that way it's simulating multiple inheritance. So let's demonstrate that. Let's go back to Visual Studio Code, and then again I'm going to get rid of all of this to implement our mixins. So I'm going to like rid of this, and then for our mixins to simulate multiple inheritance, we can do, let's create some objects. Let's do const can speak, like that, can speak, and then here let's create a method. So speak, no, not you, speak. What is this? Oh, I'm sorry. I was to create const can speak. I said let's create a property, and I'm creating a method. Sorry guys. So then we do speak, and then in here we can do return. What do we return? This the name says what does it say? It says this dot sound. So this refers to our object can speak. So we can create another object. Remember what we're trying to do here, mixins, simulating multiple inheritance. So we've created an object here. Let's create another object. Let's call that const can move. So inside here let's create a method move, and then here let's return this, the name is moving. All right, and then let's apply our mixins. Say applying mixins. Remember what we said about mixins? It allows us to simulate multiple inheritance. Or before we apply our mixins, let's create a class. Let's call class animal, like that. And then let's have a constructor here, name, and then we can do this, the name is equals to name. You already know how this works by now. So now let's apply our mixins. Applying our mixins, we can do object dot assign. So object dot assign is how we apply mixins. It's a special method used for simulating multiple inheritance. So then we can do anima. So we're passing multiple objects using object.assign. Anima.prototype. I forgot that. Prototype. So this prototype is on this constructor function. So it's the blueprint for implementing our inheritance. So we can pass the next one, object can speak, and then we can pass can move as well. So now we have 3 objects passed inside our object.assign. Remember, we're trying to simulate multiple inheritance. So let's have another class. Let's have that class dog extends animal. Yes, animal. So let's have a constructor name. Now we can do this. Let's have a super class. Super name. You know what super means? It's a reference to this animal class. So super name. Then let's have this dot sound equals to, let's go wolf, like that. Where is sound coming from? Remember, sound is not even animal, but then it's inside where? It's inside can speak. And if you look at where we're coming from, we have object.assign. Can speak is here. Animal, the prototype is also here. So when we do class.extends animal, we're able to set the value of sound to wolf here. So let's move on, and then we can create an instance of our dog. Then we can do const, I don't know, let's call it April. See, April is the name of our dog. And then we do new dog. So here I'm going to pass April as the name of our dog. Like that. So then we can do console.log, watch this, April dot speak. April dot speak. Remember, speak was here. Now we've done a can move. Move was here. We have a class animal, and then we've created a mixins object.assign. So this mixin is simulating multiple inheritance, which means this class, which is extending animal comes from a mixin of 3 different objects, which allows dog to extend the property and methods of these 3 objects through this animal class. Hopefully that makes sense. So when we do April.speak, we're able to access the method in our can speak objects. Guys, we are implementing mixing. So if I say this and then Let's go to our browser. Let's see what we get. Now we get April says woof. Amazing. Okay. So let's do one more. What if we did, so we can do console.log April.move. That is from can move objects. And then move says return this the name is moving. So we should get April is moving if that code works. So let's go to our console. Now we get April is moving. Amazing. So guys, this is how we implement mixins. Mixins allows us to simulate multiple inheritance. So we're using this special method object.assign. So anima is coming from this mixins. So where anima the prototype can speak. So this dog is extending this anima, essentially extending this mixin through the anima class. So this new instance of our dog then gives us access to the methods inside our other methods and properties inside our can speak and can move object. Remember, inside this constructor, when we create any instance, the first function that fires is the constructor function. So we set the value of our sound to woof here. And sound is not even here. Sound was here. What is sound? Sound was here. So sound was here. It's a property of this, and this is can speak objects. But then because we've applied mixes, we can access it. We can set the value inside the constructor of our anima, because through mixins, anima can speak, can move, can now share the same object and property through mixins. So by default, JavaScript only allows us to inherit from a single class, but then through mixins, we can simulate multiple inheritance. I hope you guys get the idea. Okay, so I hope to see you guys the next time. I hope you learn a thing or two from this tutorial. All right. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I hope to see you guys next time. Bye bye.